Let's look at how to optimize an IMRT prostate plan. First, let's make sure we're in the right workspace. We want to be in external beam planning. And then we'll go to planning, optimize. Here in the optimizer, we can set our objective constraints. Let's start with the normal tissue objective. I hit define NTO settings. Distance from target border, I'll select as 0.7. Starting dose is 95. Say OK. We'll change the priority from 150 to 100. And for the PTV, I'll add an upper and lower constraint. The lower constraint I'll set at 2% higher than the prescription dose, which is 80/80. And the upper constraint I'll select as 4% higher than the prescription dose, which is 82/40. And I'll then change the priority to 70. For the rectum, and this is the true rectum contour, I'll select an upper constraint somewhere in between the lower and upper constraint of the PTV. In this case, for both the rectum and bladder, I'll use an upper constraint of 81/50, and I'll leave the priority at 50. Next, let's add a constraint for the bladder opt. This contour is 1 cm away from the PTV. And so for the upper constraint, I'll select 50% of the prescription dose. This is 39/60. I'll select a priority of 50. And I'll do the same thing for the rectum opt, 50% of the prescription dose. And this is going to really help sculpt the dose around the rectum and bladder. And for the right and left femurs, I'll set an upper constraint of 45 gray. I'll leave the priority at 50 for both of these contours. Now we're ready to optimize. So we'll select optimize. And we'll let the optimizer go through several iterations before we make any changes. I'll display the PTV contour here. And what I want to see is that the DVH curve is falling right between the lower and upper constraint of the PTV. So it's doing a fairly good job right now. We'll wait a couple more iterations before we make any changes. What I'll do next is turn on the bladder minus PTV and the rectum minus PTV. And I'll look at the DVH curves that are displayed. And these contours are just outside of the PTV. And I'm going to put in a DVH curve that will help pull down the mean dose on these contours. So let's turn those on. I'll stop my optimization and I'll select the double arrow icon and drag it just slightly below the rectum minus PTV curve. So I have this structure highlighted here on the left, and now I can manually manipulate these points. And I'll select a priority of 35 for this DVH curve. So once again, I'll select the bladder minus PTV, use the double arrow icon, and select a DVH just slightly lower than the true DVH on the optimization screen. And I can manipulate these points. And my priority, once again, is 35. I'll select Start Optimization or Continue Optimization. And we'll watch as DVH curves on these two structures lowers. And throughout the optimization process, I can move the points to keep reducing the dose to the rectum and bladder. Keep in mind these two contours are outside of the PTV, so we shouldn't see any changes to our PTV coverage. And let's look at how the rectum minus PTV is doing. Let's go ahead and lower this a little bit more. And this is essentially what I do for the first optimization. And before I leave this first optimization, I'm going to increase the priority on the lower and upper constraints just to make sure I get appropriate coverage. In the next video, we'll show you how to evaluate the isodose distribution from this first optimization.